Hi there, I'm going to do a review for Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. This movie came out in 1985 and stars the usual plethora. Mel Gibson is back as Mad Max. Although in this, Bruce Spence is sort of back in this movie. He was playing the copter guy in the second movie, but now he's a different character in the third movie. Um, And also now we have Tina Turner in this movie. And this movie was interesting because it's sort of the end of the Mad Max original line. Other movies kind of were able to continue on and grab an audience with more movies. This movie did not succeed in that world. Um, This movie was in the vein of let's have another movie that let's make another Mad Max movie, but this one here is not too bad. It's not. I don't know if it's good or better or worse than Road Warrior. It's hard to compare any of the Mad Max movies because none of the Mad Max movies can have any consistency of how to compare them. One could argue the first movie is the best movie, but since its budgeting and since its storyline are so awkward and different to watch, it's hard to compare it to anything else. This movie here, it's more or less Max. He's got his car, but it's practically useless. And actually, I don't even think he's got a car in this movie. I think he's basically in a lineup of refugees at the start. Basically, he finds the Thunderdome, and he finds out basically like in the second movie, society was collapsing. In this movie, society has collapsed. Everything has happened. It's all over. But this movie here does a well enough job of trying to take on the plethora of ingenuity of the other movies. This movie here is basically more of a comedy and made slightly more for kids because you have the master and you have the blaster. And that pretty much ends up being what this whole film ends up being about. And the point is that basically Mad Max deals with different people. He ends up going down into the muck of the mining or whatever job he's supposed to be doing. He's a prisoner more or less. Does meet with who Tina Turner's playing as Entity. And more or less, this movie features a whole bunch of different stuff in it. It's got almost two different storylines too, because it starts out primarily entering the world of the Thunderdome, and then at the end, Max deals with a bunch of kids, almost the lost children. One of which is basically a grown-up woman, sort of, and it's not too bad, but it runs into its own share of problems. Um, I don't know. This movie is kind of like baffling in a way because it's more or less about how things have reacted. I don't think the world would actually go this way. In fact, I don't think if we face a real serious energy crisis, I think all that's going to happen is that we're going to have to learn how to deal with things very differently than we've been dealing with them for the last 100 years almost. This movie here, not too bad. Uh, More or less, Mad Max gets into a pen fight with a character, and it's more or less about dealing with all the different characters, Master Blaster, and yeah, it doesn't it doesn't have too much trouble. It's got some empathy in it. It's not quite as dystopic as say as the Road Warrior. It's more of a fun movie. Um, Nonetheless, it has all the usual problems of a movie of this type. Is that it's got a lot of wacky characters in it, and more or less not sure exactly what to make of all the different colorful characters of the Thunderdome. And yes, he does meet with Anti-Entity, and that doesn't go the way one would think. Tina Turner kind of is curious of an acting choice in this movie. Guess they needed another big name in this movie. Mel Gibson by this time. Well, actually, I guess Mel Gibson wasn't that terribly well known in 1985. Not yet. This was a little bit before he was going to become big with the Lethal Weapon movies. So yeah, that's still to come. But nonetheless, this movie's not too bad. I actually think that the Thunderdome part is not that interesting, and I actually tend to like the ending part where it deals with the kids because the kids are from what a plane or whatever that went down, and they're the survivors, and they basically the captain died, and now they're trying to put together the pieces. They're used to the concept of TV, but they don't know how to do anything with television. They were apparently when things went down, they were just the one girl was just old enough to remember the world of things still sort of working. Although it's kind of hard to tell exactly how old any of them are because none of them. It's actually kind of hard to tell how old any of them actually are. Uh, she doesn't seem old enough to remember the world before. In fact, I think that's the worst thing about these movies is that the world collapsed in such a oddball way. Mad Max is not old enough to really like the world's not been long enough. I swear they're trying to insinuate this is only like 50. This is 50 years later. I would say this is a good 100 years later that this is happening, and there's no way Max would be old enough to be in that point. The first movie was right when society is in decay, and then the second movie appears to have been at least 20 years after the collapse. That's what it appears to me. And the Road Warrior appears to be a far distant future, but and yet they're trying to play it off as maybe 20 or 25 years into the future. The next movie in the series would I think the worst thing about the Mad Max movies is how you go from beyond Thunderdome all the way up to Fury Road, and the time jump there is so huge in terms not only of the time of our timeline but in their timeline, because in Fury Road it's almost like well over 150 years has passed. Again, this is not like the Terminator movies or the RoboCop movies or Predators or even the Lethal Weapons or the Die Hards. This is a very different franchise. It's very much favoring Australia's uniqueness. But nonetheless, I think that this movie's not. I think this movie franchise has its goods and its bads. Again, it's not entirely clear what the franchise's timeline is. It's not entirely clear when the Road Warrior takes place. In fact, from the hint at the end of the movie is that the entire movie was from the perspective of the feral child, because that's basically what he said. So the feral child was talking about Max, and that's all we know about what was going on there. I think that's the worst thing about any of these movies is that they're kind of they're almost like a story. They're like a legend, a myth of Mad Max. Except for the fact that Max in the first movie wasn't really mad until the end when his family got attacked. Other than that, no, I find it very hard to talk about the Mad Max movies because they don't seem to know exactly what their timeline is or how far it is. The Beyond Thunderdome is kind of amusing because it's so awkward compared to even the Road Warrior. And again, the Road Warrior, the Beyond Thunderdome, at the end of the movie, they hint that Sydney, Australia has been in decay for quite a long time. So, not sure of the timelines here. I would say that it's probably been at least 75 years since Sydney, Australia went down. Probably more than that. It's probably a good 100 years. And yet this is supposedly the same. This is a similar Max to the first movie. Again, these movies have loose canon problems. Their timelines aren't really adding up. Although it does work out in the end. I think the biggest hint is that in the Beyond Thunderdome, you've got a fight sequence and you got other things happening to hint that society really has been out for at least 50 years. But I don't know, Max would be a lot older than he is in this movie if that was the case. It's supposedly only been a decade or more. I'm not sure. It's not entirely clear how long it's actually been. Um, I think the worst thing about any of these films is that they're not entirely sure what stories they're trying to tell about Mad Max. It's just the fact that, um, but yeah, Mad Max movies, they have their uniqueness. First movie was very low budget. Second movie up the budget, although it wasn't that much. I mean, people talk about it being up the budget, except for the fact it wasn't that huge of a budget. You take a look at the actual amount they spent; it was nothing. This Beyond Thunderdome was more along with the lines of what Hollywood was actually spending on action movies at this point, which was around $15 or $20 million, if I remember right. Nonetheless, it's not too bad of a film. Yeah, Max. I don't know. None of these films are particularly great. They're just trying to tell stories about a world of dystopia where the oil crisis has, an energy crisis has happened and the world collapsed, and the major countries kind of fell apart as oil became hard to get. And yeah, they couldn't figure out what to do. But nonetheless, yeah, this movie is all right. Again, I think I like the part with the kids better than the part with the Thunderdome because the Thunderdome gets too many weird characters in it, whereas the kids seem like a normalcy because they're trying to replicate what they think the world was before, whereas the Thunderdome is merely just trying to be a UFC fight in the middle of essentially what is a prison, a silly disjointed prison. But yeah, nonetheless, Beyond Thunderdome, it's not too bad. It's actually it's kind of funny, more comical than the other two. Nonetheless, there's